Hello, everybody. Welcome to my podcast on what kids need. In today's podcast, I want to talk about having a voice that children really need to be listened to. And I mean listened to actively, not listened to while you're thinking about something else or writing out the grocery list. This is a little different to giving full attention. That's another section I've done. This is to have a voice. What children want to do is connect with other people, particularly with their parents and their family, and they want to tell us stuff. And the more we can involve ourselves in their world and be interested in what they're interested in and actually integrate with them on those subjects, the better will be the relationship. Because if you listen to kids, they just want to tell you all their stuff. They want to tell you about the dog, what the dog did the other day. They want to tell you what happened at school. They want to tell you about their friend. They want to share their world with you. And if you actually want to share your life with your children, you have to share their world with them. It might not be your world, and it might not even be that interesting to you, some of this stuff, but it's important that you listen and that they have a voice and that you hear them. Because children who are heard and who are listened to feel nourished. They feel emotionally nourished because it's an emotional connection when you listen to somebody and then you respond back to them. For example, on the way home from school, let them just talk. If they don't want to talk, that's fine too. But if they just want to talk about the day, you just let them talk. And you just let them talk and you let them talk and you just listen. And if you want to say something in between, you say it or add something to the conversation. But it's just about listening to them. They'll want to tell you about their Fortnite game that they're playing. They'll want to tell you about what happened when they went to so-and-so's house. They will want to tell you about the cartoon they watched and what happened during the cartoon. They want to share what is their internal life with you. And you need to be present and you need to let them have that voice and not shut them down. Usually children, when they first see you, again, they like to tell you a lot of things. And you can make like an information thing. For example, you say, oh, so how did it go today? And how's so-and-so? And what happened when you went there? And did you enjoy the sports lesson today? Whatever it is, you actually ask them about their world and they will usually come forward and talk to you about it. Oh, I see you've got, different top on now. Did you decide to wear that top today instead of the other one? Yes, and off they go. Now, this goes for children all over the world. If you've got next door neighbours like we have, we're always talking to the children next door. Oh, I see you've got new shoes. Yeah, these are my shoes and I went and bought them. Dad went to Rebel Sports and this whole story will come out. And have fun with them when you do this too. Keep it light and make some little jokes around it and have lots of fun with your kids when you're talking to them. So they need to have a voice in terms of telling you what they've been doing, what they're interested in, what happened during the game, what so-and-so did at recess or lunchtime at school, all these kind of things. That's the first type of voice. The other type of voice is to have a voice where they can actually tell you how they feel and they don't get into trouble. So they can actually express themselves and learn to have a voice. Because children who are shut down often live in abusive homes, but sometimes they live in what I'd call emotionally abusive home. They never be touched, they never get hit, they might not even be screamed at, but emotionally they're shut down all the time. So you need to give your child a voice. So when they're upset, they're allowed to say what they feel and think. When they're tired, they're allowed to be grumpy. When they're sick, they're allowed to be miserable. When they're sad, they're allowed to be sad. It's allowing them to express by using their voice how they feel, what's going on inside them, with no judgment from you, with just tolerance and compassion and love and listening. Sometimes it's not a learning experience with them. You just have to listen to them. You don't even have to say anything, teach them anything, model anything. You just listen to them. And sometimes when they tell you how much they hate, Ben at school because he's such a bully and he always bullies everybody and I want him to die because I hate him, you just let them say it all and say at the end, yeah, it's really upsetting when people are like that. It really is awful and makes everyone else's life terrible, doesn't it? And is there anything I can do to help you? That's what children, they want to be heard. And then if you want to respond positively, that's even better. You will know if you grew up in a household where you didn't have a voice. You will know that you were shut out, you were shut down, you were sent to your room, you were told this is not acceptable, and any kind of expression, verbal expression in your house was completely either had to be acceptable or you had to be quiet. We weren't allowed to have opinions on things. You weren't allowed to go against the status quo of the family. You weren't allowed to stand up to the rules of the family and question things, especially social justice things. Anything political, when you got in your teenage years, you would have been squashed. And you don't want to have that with your children, because that breeds resentment, and it also breeds alienation, that you become alienated to the person you're having the argument with. You need to find what I call points of connection with your children and teenagers, not points of disconnection. So when they say some view that you might not like, particularly as a teenager, they might express something, you can say, I'd never thought of it like that. It's a different way of looking at it, really. I'll go away and have a think about that. Never thought that way. You might have a point there. You have to listen to them. You have to let them speak. And then you don't have big judgment at the end or punishment because they've spoken. Of course, when children are, or teenagers are really disrespectful and screaming and yelling at you and doing that, you have to have some kind of discipline around that. But to a degree, the most important thing to have happening is that you're listening to what they're saying. It's not about the screaming and the yelling, it's what they're actually saying to you. So if they're screaming at you and telling you that they hate you and it's not fair, that's where you go, not to the fact they're screaming and yelling. Okay, so you hate me, why do you hate me? What's not fair? What do you think would be a more fair decision? Why did you feel it wasn't fair? That's where you go, where the actual problem is not about the expression of the problem. Because we all yelled and screamed. They've seen you yelling and screaming. They've seen you yelling on the phone at the Optus guy because, he's driving you nuts. They've seen you yelling at your husband or wife or partner. They've seen all that. They've seen you in the kitchen yelling about your boss. But you were allowed to have that expression. No one shut you down. And so they can see that why can you do that, but they can't do that. Of course, there's social etiquette and all the rules and regulations about politeness, etc. But you can still instill those in children, and they maintain their voice. They keep their voice. I remember when one of my sons was born, one of the grandparents, one of the grandmothers said, "Don't break his spirit." Now, I think she had broken the spirit of her child and realised it too late, because it wasn't actually in my DNA to break a child's spirit, but she had done it. And when she said that to me, I thought that was really valid and good advice. But you want your child to still maintain their spirit, their identity, who they are, that they can own all of themselves and have a voice, even if it's not something you particularly agree with. Remember, your children are some of you, but not all of you. They will be bits and pieces of all the different family members, and they will have their own personality. Also, by listening to the other person, it makes it a much more joining together kind of experience, that instead of you arguing about it, you're listening to them and you're taking on board what they're saying, and you understand why they have that point of view. So you can say to them, I see why you feel like that. I see why you think that. I understand why you would think that. You might not agree with what they do or say, but you can understand how they got to this point. And when you have understanding between people, you don't have to have the same views. You just have to have the respect of the understanding. That's what people really want. So give your child a voice. Let your child have a voice. Let them have a voice when they're telling you all the things that happened and you're listening all about the game, and they're talking with hardly, particularly when they're young, there's sort of hardly any full stops in between. It's just like a big, long story. And you listen to that and bring yourself back when you start floating away, and then let them have a voice about what they think or how they feel. It's natural to feel angry and hateful and punishing and sad and fearful and anxiety ridden. It's natural, and they're allowed to have all those, and they're allowed to actually voice it. You need to make a safe place in your home so your child can voice things, and then once they voice them, then you can actually talk about it, and you can actually talk about other choices you might want to make, or what's a real outcome of this or not a real outcome of this. Because sometimes it's just venting, and we do it, and they should be allowed to do it too and not be punished for venting. It's just that we have this kind of one rule for us and one rule for them. Have a look at this one, see if you can give your child or teenagers a voice, and make sure that you listen to them. That's the most important thing that you can do. So I'm sending you lots of love and lots of light.